You ready?
Someone's not.
You ready? Okay.
Oh, this we do?
Yeah. Let's try to wake you up there a little bit too.
Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to
Hello, is this better? All right. If I do speak too low, I tend to kind of pull away from the microphone. If you stop hearing me, please raise your hand so I can tune things up a little bit. So again, good morning and welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Linda Phippen and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. As a member of the worship committee, I am pleased to be the worship associate for today's service. Whether you're here in person or watching on YouTube this morning or at some later time, we are glad you have joined us. At Westside, we strive to live lives centered on love and express that love through caring for ourselves, our neighbors, and the wider world, its people and other beings. Through love and care, we hope to build a community that will thrive and benefit us all. As members of the congregation know, this is the weekend of our annual retreat, and our settled minister, the Reverend Carol Badeau, will not be here today. However, we have an excellent guest speaker whom I will tell you more about a bit later. If you are here in person, please join us after the service for coffee, light snacks, and conversation. I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about. In your order of service or scrolling on the YouTube screen earlier, there are announcements about upcoming events and other information. You can also find announcements in our website or in our weekly newsletter, which you can subscribe to on the website if you're not already subscribed. I would like to mention a couple of announcements in particular. We are now able to offer childcare during Sunday services. Children are always welcome to stay with family during services, but there will also be supervised activities available in one of our classrooms. And in January, we are very excited that we will be able to start again a religious exploration program for children. Perhaps you've noticed that hymnals have been passed out, even though there's nothing in the order of service that says anything about that. You have the hymnals because we are going to sing. It will be hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses, verses 1, 4, and 5 only. So if you'd like to stand and are able to stand, we welcome you to join in on the singing. So now that we've awakened at least your voices, I'm going to ask Jan Ko to sound our singing bowl, to bring us into the present moment and the spirit of the day. So Judy Winchester is going to light the chalice this morning. The chalice reading today has been chosen by our guest speaker, Mark Mohundro. It is an excerpt from A Hidden Wholeness by Parker Palmer. There was a time when farmers on the Great Plains, at the first sign of a blizzard, would run a rope from the back door of their house out to the barn. They all knew stories of people who had wandered off and been frozen to death, having lost sight of home in a whiteout while still in their own backyards. Today, we live in a blizzard of another sort. It swirled around us as economic injustice, ecological ruin, physical and spiritual violence, and their inevitable outcome, war. It swirls within us as fear and frenzy, greed and deceit, and indifference to the suffering of others. We all know stories of people who have wandered off into this madness and been separated from their own souls, losing their moral bearings and even their mortal lives. The lost ones come from every walk of life: clergy and corporate executives, politicians and people on the street, celebrities and school children. Some of us fear that we, or those we love, will become lost in the storm. Some of us are lost at this moment and are trying to find our way home. Some are lost without knowing it. And some are using the blizzard as cover while cynically exploiting its chaos for private gain. My own experience of the blizzard, which includes getting lost in it more often than I like to admit, tells me that the soul's order can never be destroyed. It may be obscured by the whiteout. We may forget or deny it, or forget or deny that its guidance is close at hand. And yet, we are still in the soul's backyard with chance after chance to regain our bearings. So today, Mark Mohundro, who's sitting here from Teneesssee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church, will share his reflections on the intersection of activism and spirituality. Mark has been a lifelong activist, both through the lens of spirituality and without. For the last year and a half, Mark and other Unitarian Universalists around the state have been working on the beginnings of a unified action network of the congregations here in Teneesssee, and he will give its background and their hopes and dreams for the future. Mark has been a UU since 2003, initially at First UU of Richmond, Virginia, and then at Teneesssee Valley Universalist Church, which he joined in 2012. Mark was born in Knoxville, but has lived in many states and countries, including Louisiana and Germany. Mark's scope of experience is wide and varied, and he is most proud of his time spent working for Planned Parenthood of Middle and East Tennessee as a grassroots organizer and a front desk coordinator. He is a longtime supporter of multiple social justice causes, and most of his advocacy work has concerned abortion rights, gender equality, anti-racism, and anti-oppression work. Mark is currently an active member of TVUUC, serving on its Reproductive Justice Task Force and Adult Religious Exploration Committee, as well as being on the church's staff. And Mark is going to be participating with Jan Coe and Pat in the next part of our service, a musical meditation.
All right, this is a beautiful and very well-known chant that I'm going to sing in the Sanskrit, and Mark will eventually read the words in English so you will know what it means. I chose it today partly because of its meaning and his message today, and partly because Chris Edkins asked me to write this. So, all right. Om Purnamada vashishyate om. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Om Purnamada.
What is visible is the infinite. What is invisible is also the infinite. Out of the infinite being, the finite has come. Yet being infinite, only infinite remains. Peace in my heart, peace with each other, peace in the cosmos.
Shanti, shanti. Om Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaye, Purnameva vashishyate om. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Shanti, shanti, shanti.
Good morning. Thank you for my invitation to be here today. My name is Mark Mohundro. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm approximately a 6'1" white male with brown hair that is starting to go much gray, and wearing a black shirt and jeans. So today I'll be talking about the intersection of spirituality and activism. Activism and spirituality are two powerful forces that can be used to create positive change in the world. While at times they may seem like separate spheres, they are deeply interconnected for me. Spirituality plays a foundation for my activism. A strong spiritual connection can give activists courage, resilience, and motivation to keep on fighting for justice, even when it becomes very, very hard. It can help them to stay grounded and centered in their work and to avoid burnout. And activism can be a form of spiritual practice. When we take action to create a more just and compassionate world, we are putting our shared values into practice. This can be a deeply fulfilling and transformative experience. In our world today, we are faced with a multitude of challenges that demand our attention and action, from climate change to social injustice. There is no shortage of causes that need our voices and efforts. We are bombarded with images of suffering and injustice, easy to become overwhelmed by the negativity that surrounds us. As an activist and person of faith, I am called to confront these injustices head on. I'm called to speak out against oppression and to work for a more just and equitable world. In face of these challenges, it is easy to become consumed by activism. I can become so focused on the external world and the need for change that I neglect my own inner life. We can become so caught up in the fight we lose sight of the fire that burns within us and that threatens to consume us. And as I said earlier, I've done activism through the lens of spirituality and without it. And without it, I've ended up in some pretty bad places. Most recently was when I moved back to Knoxville around 2008, and I got back involved with Planned Parenthood. They had hired me as a grassroots organizer to try and defeat the anti-abortion amendment we unfortunately passed in 2014. So I was working full-time at one job, and then this was a part-time job, but it was more between 20 and 30 hours, so I was roughly, for about 2.5 years, working average 60 to 70 hours a week, doing my activism with Planned Parenthood, going to speak at churches, going to speak at some of the local Democratic Party. And I couldn't really ask my full-time job off for Sundays when they had already said that they would be happy to let me take off any time that I needed for Planned Parenthood within reason. And so the thing that I sacrificed was going to TVUUC. And if you talk with anybody who was around me during that period, I was angry all the time. I was consumed by just that turning people on the other side into others. And it became just me being in a bad place for several years. I neglected my health. I knew there were some issues wrong, but to me, an activism without spirituality can be driven by anger, resentment, and a sense of hopelessness. Spirituality without activism can be inward-focused and lacking in a sense of social responsibility. Activism with spirituality, for me, is like fire with heat. It is not just loud and visible, it is also warm and inviting. Not just about generating smoke, it is about providing light and guidance. And when I'm connected to my spirituality, my activism is fueled by a deeper sense of purpose. I'm not just fighting for change. I'm fighting for something that I believe in with all of my heart. I'm not just trying to make the world better. I'm trying to embody the change I want to see. And it's important for me to find a balance between spirituality and activism. Spirituality is the source of my inner fire. It is the wellspring from which my deepest motivations and commitments flow. It's the force that gives me strength to keep on going. But when my activism becomes the sole focus of my life, it has led to burnout and despair. However, when I have that spiritual foundation, I can sustain my activism over the long term. And activism can be draining and demanding. It is important for me to remember, and I remind myself over and over again, that I cannot pour from an empty cup, and if I want to help others, I've got to pull the oxygen down first. So self-care has been extremely important to me. If I'm not taking care of my own spiritual well-being and finding some sort of anchor, I won't be able to maintain that for the long run. And without the spiritual anchor, love drifts into hate, and drinking only from this cup of sorrow, it becomes hate that poisons and seals my fate. Anger and bitterness consume the soul, leaving a void that can never be whole. A spiritual anchor is something that provides me a sense of grounding, stability, and purpose in my life. A spiritual anchor can be a powerful tool for activism. It can give me a sense of purpose and meaning, reminding me of why I do this work in the first place. And here are some ways a spiritual anchor can help. It can help give you courage to stand up for what you believe, even when it is difficult. And it is difficult in Tennessee and now in the whole country. It can help me to stay focused on goals and persevere in the face of adversity. It can also help us develop compassion and empathy for others, which is essential. It can also provide us with a sense of belonging and community. And here are some examples of how activists have used their spiritual anchors. The civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. was inspired by his Christian faith to fight for racial justice. The environmental activist Greta Thunberg is motivated by her belief in the interconnectedness of all life to protect the planet. And the peace activist Gandhi used his Hindu faith to guide his nonviolent resistance to British rule in India. And these are just a few examples of how spiritual anchor can support activism. And if you are an activist or want to get into it, I encourage you to explore your own spiritual anchor, and here are some tips for using your spiritual anchor to support your activism. take time each day to connect with it, meditate, whether that be prayer, spending time in nature, or reading. And reflect on how your spiritual values and beliefs inform you. What are you fighting for? Why is this important? And also finding a community of activists who share your spiritual values, like Westside, like Tennessee Valley, like Oak Ridge, like the 11 other Unitarian Universalist congregations in Tennessee. And my spiritual anchor helps me stay grounded. It can be, when I have a spiritual anchor, it's a source of strength I can draw on. And this strength does help me get through these difficult times. And so I tend to my spiritual needs, nurturing the love that resides within. And when I do this, I know that no matter what comes my way, I'll have the strength to face it each day. Now I'm going to just take a moment to talk about a recent thing with combining my spirituality with my activism. About a year and a half ago, started working on what we call the State Action Network. And State Action Networks are an official thing with the UUA. There's 19 states active now as far as State Action Network. And that's what I think it would be great to have here in Tennessee as well with our congregations. So, like I said, a year and a half ago, put out the call from Side with Love, the UUA's social justice arm, to see if we can get more UUs at Planned Parenthood's Day on the Capitol back in February. And we got people from Knoxville, Maryville, and the Nashville congregations. Wasn't a lot at start, but then later on that year, of course, we know that you had the stuff with the two Justins and Gloria Jackson, and we put out the call again, and we got even more. And it is a drive to Nashville. It's not the easiest thing in the world. But we also went back for the special session where we're trying to get common sense gun laws passed, and several of us participated in a thing before the session that day. We formed a human ring around the Capitol, and each shared our own meditation or just a prayer. And this was interfaith, but it was probably about 200 to 300 people, somewhere in there. So, like I said, there's a chance that we could become a State Action Network. We're still trying to figure out exactly what we're going to do, whether it be just a cluster thing with the 4 congregations here, which we've done in the past. About, good Lord, 7 or 8 years ago, Westside hosted a workshop on putting together worship elements. And Reverend Jake from Oak Ridge, Reverend Carol, and Reverend Laura Bogle were here, and it was great. And it was for the 4 congregations here. And hopefully we could get something more like that down the line. But we are still trying to figure that out. There's actually been 2 members of Westside that have been involved with some of these meetings. So during the election, we've taken a pause, and on January 18th, it's going to be over at Tennessee Valley, but we're going to have a retreat, and it's going to be at Tennessee Valley, and there will also be multi-platform options, so if you can't make it to TVUC, you could tune in via Zoom. But during that retreat, we're going to try and figure out who we are, what we are, and what we want to do, and there is a myriad of things that need working on here in Tennessee. LGBTI plus issues, just with the state becoming worse and worse as far as that goes. Reproductive rights, which have been stripped away here in Tennessee, and trying to get some common sense gun laws passed. I mean, there's so much to do, and being connected, and we'd like to have all 14 Tennessee congregations, but we start with what we got. But this is a way for churches and UUs to feel like they're not just on an island. General Assembly, our UUA General Assembly, is going to be in Baltimore next year, and I've been several times, and it's wonderful being around that many other UUs, even though we disagree at times. But It's something that, I mean, GA is not an easy thing to go to. It is very, very expensive. And this way, we can have a regional thing where y'all can meet some of your neighbors, and we can work together, and we can share resources. If there's something like, say, I've been trained to facilitate a course on reproductive justice, and hopefully we'll be able to offer that to the whoever is in this cluster group. But it's just a way of not feeling alone, and I hope maybe you'll consider joining us. And it may just be us getting to know each other and being in community, but we will start figuring some of that stuff out in January. And if you want to talk with me a little bit more about that afterwards, I'll be glad to. Speaking here up in Tennessee, it can be very scary. And it may seem like there aren't that many of us, but there are. There's 13 other congregations beside this one, and they vary in size, but that's 14, and hopefully we'll have that 14 and get a state action network here in Tennessee. There's one in North Carolina, one in Kentucky, and we could then be a larger force for regional stuff. So I'm going to go back and start speaking about the spiritualism and activism, but I did want to just put that commercial in there and let y'all know what's going on as far as my organizing and spirituality. But there's been several congregations that have been involved with this for a while. So in the interplay of spirituality and activism, we find a synergy that can transform our world. Our spiritual beliefs call us to live justly, love deeply, and seek the common good. Our activism becomes a sacred response to a call to make the world a better place. So as we leave this sacred space today, may we remember that our spirituality and activism need not be separate. They can be harmonious and a powerful force for change. In the excerpt of the reading by Parker Palmer that Linda read, he compares our modern world to a blizzard that can disorient us and separate us from our souls, and he warns of the dangers of losing our moral bearings. He said the key to the blizzard is to take steps and find your way back home. And that is what Unitarian Universalism is for me. It's one of the guide ropes that helps lead me back again and again to the spirit of life in my spiritual home. And Unitarian Universalism is the container I have where I can be my more authentic self and have my cup filled. I hope that guide rope also helps you or anyone else who's looking for refuge from the storm, especially the storm we have going on right now. People in our neighborhoods, our cities, our states, and there are a lot of people looking for refuge from a storm. And so as we go out into the world to fight justice and fight for change, let us not forget to tend the fire within us. For it is only when we are truly connected to our deepest selves that we can truly make a difference in the world. And may we be all such people. May we all be fires that burn with the heat of compassion, the light of wisdom, and the power of love. Blessed be, may it be so. Amen.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. It's important and inspiring to hear that underneath the disturbed surface of politics and discord, dedicated people are working to make things better. And speaking of which, I think you've all probably heard the saying that an army travels on its stomach. Well, a church travels on the generosity of its members and friends. So we no longer pass the plate, but if you look in the back of the room, you'll see a table with two boxes. One is for donations, just general donations to West Side, and the other is for our Justice and Generosity partner. Our current partner is Awesome Found, which Morgan Ringlespaugh talked about a few weeks ago. If you'd like to, you can put cash or check into either one as it suits you. And there's also QR codes on the front if you prefer to use electronic donation. Also on our website, and I believe in our order of service, that there is a QR code too. So I would like to close today's service with a benediction. Now, usually what we do is we stand and gather and hold hands if you'd like to. Nobody is compelled to hold anybody's hand. If you'd like to hold your own hand, that's good. As cold and flu and COVID season ramps up, I think I'm going to be holding my own hand once in a while. So this comes from the Buddhist tradition. Be ye lamps unto yourselves. Be your own confidence. Hold to the truth within yourselves as to the only lamp. Go in peace, go in passion into the week and into the crazy world around us. As I like talking just on a lectern, I'd see if we could get another little table to put people in a glass of water.
I mean, it worked for, I mean, just, but yeah, my mouth has been drying out really badly.
Yeah, well, I think it's the air is drying out. I notice my nose is dry and itchy, and yeah, so.
The reading that was done, I also have a copy of that.
This would be fine.
Okay.